Let's get deeper into why student loans can't be canceled while also examining the proposals on the table. And for that, we bring in Beth Akers. She's the senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a think tank that researches government, politics, economics, and social welfare. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I know that you have said that forgiving student debt would backfire and create more debt only a few years later. Can you explain that? Nobody wants more debt.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we all agree that something needs to be done, that the trend that we're on is problematic. If we're to cancel debt today, my concern is that it sends the messages to the students of tomorrow that the government is going to come in and wipe away all your debt periodically, maybe 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And what happens is when people believe that to be true, they're going to change the way that they pay for college, decide how much to spend for college, and how much they're willing to borrow. And I believe it's going to push prices up over time. And very quickly, we're going to be back in the very same spot, which is going to put political pressure on legislators and the White House again to act. We need a more fundamental solution to what's happening here.
I know that there's also a conversation around this being a fairness issue. If the government were to pay off the debt now, you'd see that as if some taxpayers would be paying the debts owed by other taxpayers. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple fairness issues. First, we've got people who felt like, hey, I paid for school and I didn't get this. I'm not that sympathetic to them because I feel like we make innovations all the time that make life better for people. If this were a good policy, I'd say, you know, life's not fair. But where it's not fair and I think is problematic is that when we look at who benefits from a loan cancellation policy, it's not the people who are the neediest in our society, in our economy. It's actually people who are quite well off. We know that the top 40% of the income distribution holds about 60% of student debt. Yes, these people have big debts. They also tend to have high incomes. Education is an investment. And for these people, it's very likely going to pay huge dividends over the long run. To my mind, these are not the people that we want to be shelling out taxpayer dollars to support.
I know some people say canceling student loans would help address the racial wealth disparity. And on that, you wrote, attempting to fix the racial wealth gap through loan cancellation would be akin to fixing gender pay disparity by giving a tax break to every female CEO. What about making college free like it is in many other countries? I mean, do you support that idea?
Well, first of all, the idea of addressing racial wealth inequality through the student loan system is a little bit silly. Black and brown borrowers are a minority of debt holders. They hold a relatively small share of the outstanding balance. So the idea that wiping it away is the best way to help them while also giving huge giveaways to a lot of well-off white students, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So now the question of free college. Of course, other countries have this, and it might lower the barrier so that more low-income students believe they can go to college, even though right now a lot of them are already going for free because of the programs through the state and federal aid that give them a lot of cash. I'm not a huge fan of making college free or socializing the higher ed sector because I think what we have today is a market where institutions, colleges, and universities competing against each other makes our system of higher education the best in the world. And I fear that if we have a government takeover of the industry, we'll lose that. I think there are better ways to message and make low-income students appreciate that there are benefits available to them so that college is within their financial reach.
You've proposed a compromise regarding canceling small amounts of debt and reforming the system. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that there is already an avenue for borrowers who are in trouble to have their loans forgiven. They can also make reduced monthly payments if they're in a period of having low earnings relative to how much they borrowed. The program doesn't work that well. It needs radical reform through legislation, but there's not a lot of people talking about doing that. But that's the number one thing that needs to happen. What I've said is, okay, if politically we need to have some cancellation happen because that's what's a priority for the Democratic Party, then do that. But let's use it as a chip to get the broader reform of the student loan safety net that we really critically need. What that means is put everybody on a repayment program that allows them to pay, instead of a fixed monthly payment like you would on a mortgage or a car loan, just to pay a percentage of your income. So repaying your student loans becomes something like a tax.
My bottom line question for you on student debt. How should we tackle this problem? And if you could sum that up in 30 to 45 seconds for our viewer.
You know, we need to stop people from taking on loans that are going to be unaffordable. Often we know that people are taking on liabilities for themselves that don't make any sense. We need to stop that on the front end, and we need to make sure that borrowers who do get in trouble on the back end have a reliable way that is not overwhelmingly difficult to navigate to have that debt taken away from them. Higher education is a critical mechanism for social mobility in our economy, and it needs to work well.
Beth Akers, we appreciate you joining us on The Why and sharing your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.